all the way from Canada, and he nearly got lost on the way. I met every train, and he wasn't on it until the very last one, and I was having nerves. I said, this man's come all the way from Canada. How can he get lost in Boyle? Ridiculous. Anyway, it's lovely to see you, Grant, and I'll leave you to introduce yourself and tell us what exactly you're going to be talking about.
Very good. Firstly, I should sort of thank Betty for inviting me. What you people may not realize if you're not a speaker is that a speaker's life in ufology is a lot easier than yours. I have a very large staff that works for me, and nobody gives me any grief about UFOs. I really don't talk about it outside of my field, but I'm on coast to coast the odd time, and some of my people will hear it coming into work. And you'll hear them murmuring, "Oh, did you hear Grant was on coast to coast last night?" And then when I go to the States, all they say is, "Are you going? Where are you going?" And then I say, "I'm going to the States." "Where are you going this time?" And then I tell them, and then they say, "Are you doing that lecture stuff?" And I said, "Yeah." And so this time when I have 3 offices, and the outside office is where everybody has their lunch. And I told them I was going, and then they said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Ireland." And it was like this dead silence in the room as the wheels started to grind. And basically what happens is they all sort of think that this has got to be for real. If they're bringing people to Ireland to talk about this, it's got to be real. But of course I have one skeptic. One of my coordinators is sort of a skeptic. No, he's a real skeptic. He's a high IQ guy, figures he knows it all. So then when this dead silence took place, I got up and I walked out to my second office and into my main office, and I could hear him getting the sheep back into the barn and making comments, and they all just basically went back into the barn again. But I know that they're doubting sheep now. This kind of stuff, when I come here, I'm sure they're all talking about it. In fact, I had somebody meet me just the day before I came, and they said, "I hear you're going." My neighbor, he's a chaplain at the University of Manitoba, and he had heard about this. "I heard you're going to Ireland just for a couple of days. What's going on?" And the word is spread around, and it does help us. I sort of feel sorry for people who sort of don't have, who are facing skepticism. I've faced one skeptic in the last, I'd say, 6 or 7 years. That was about a week and a half ago, and a very weird paranormal event happened while he was ridiculing me, which basically turned the conversation, and I just went and, "Okay, do you know what happened? Do you know what happened?" And basically I have really not faced much skepticism, and I think it's a lot to do with my lecturing. Now, as Betty said, I am from Canada, and we're famous for a few things. One thing that you may know about me, I am from the coldest major metropolitan area in the world. It's Winnipeg. It's right just north of North Dakota, about 60 miles from the border, and it was the coldest winter in 14 years. So people say they want to go to Mars. Think about it. I mean, Mars is twice as cold as we are, but people don't even realize how cold can get. It was 50 some below with wind chill for about 3 or 4 days in a row. Another thing that you might, as this is an Irish audience, in Winnipeg in August we have what's called Folklorama. We're a very multicultural city, and we have all the different cultures hold pavilions, and they last for a week, and there's 2 different weeks, and the Irish is one of the biggest. It used to be the biggest. This year it wasn't. This is the Irish, and you can see the lineup around the building, people trying to get into the Celtic Irish pavilion, and the Brazilians, I think, beat you out this year, but it is one of the most important events in Winnipeg, and you may be surprised to know there are 87, we have a population of 700,000, there are 87,000 Irish in the city. And I bet you didn't know there was that many Irish who like cold weather. I've done a few things. I got started in 1975 with a sighting. I wrote a manuscript called Tales of Charlie Red Star. It went around to a bunch of publishers. Some people read it. The main publisher in Winnipeg, who should have published it because it was a big-time story there, looking back, I think this is one of the biggest UFO flops ever in the world, and it really hasn't got any publicity because the manuscript was never published. The local publisher said to me, "You may believe in this kind of stuff, count me among the unbelievers." That was my rejection letter. anybody who wants it, if I've got some business cards, if you want, I'll give you a business card. You can make a contact to me. I will give you a link on the internet where you can actually download this. It's about 250 pages, has photographs. It's an incredible story of a flap that lasted for about a year and a half. That's how I got involved. The other thing I did, and what happened was the sightings really didn't impress anybody very much. I went to study what the Canadian government had worked on, and because one of the people that was had a sighting had been involved with the Canadian government in the early 1950s, I worked on that, which led me to this book that we wrote. This is the first book ever published by MUFON. It's called UFOs, MJ-12, and the Government. If you read Richard Dolan's latest book, you will see the majority of this book is in his new book. It's the story of Dr. Eric Walker, who was the former president of Penn State University, very prominent guy inside the White House, former Assistant Secretary of Defense for weapons. And that story, we wrote that up, but unfortunately MUFON, it was an internal publication. It only published 1,000 copies, and unless you were in MUFON, you couldn't get it. So again, nobody really knew what this story was about. I have a number of websites. My main one is the President's UFO website. I have, what I do is I put down every possible story that has been rumored around or stuff that I've researched. I've been to all the presidential libraries trying to gather material. I've got all the documents, the cartoons from the presidents. If you want to go there, some of the stuff I've even forgotten. I know I was reading Richard Dolan's latest book, and I'm looking for new presidential material, and there was one good story in there, and I said, man, that's an incredible story. Whenever we got that from, I checked the footnote, it was me. So, I mean, there's so many stories. It's a very big website. I don't even remember some of the stories. The ones I'm going to do today, I'm going to basically talk about Bill Clinton, who made a famous statement here in Ireland. I'm going to explain to you what he said and why he said it. And I will do Barack Obama, who is, I don't know if he's as popular here as he is in Canada, the United States. My mother is 80 years old. She is absolutely crazy about this guy. I mean, she just can't stop talking about the guy. And so this is my other site. I have the Hillary Clinton UFO website because Hillary Clinton was very much interested. She's interested in all sort of paranormal phenomena. She was interested in UFOs, and we have a website for her. We also have the Barack Obama UFO website. So those are the three main websites that I have. I have a webmaster out of Florida who runs these sites. It's very nice to send it to him and say, put this up, and he puts it up. For some of you may know, I had co-authored a book with Steve Bassett. It was due out 2 days ago. The unfortunate news was they had pre-sold 20,000 copies. It would have been on the New York Times bestseller list, and it fell apart in the last couple of days before the manuscript went in. And the new co-author I have is Angela Joyner, who is famous for the Stevensville flap last year, the reporter from, she's working on it with me now, and hopefully it'll be out. It'll be a big-time seller when it does come out. There was 3 companies actually bidding for the book because Presidents and UFOs, I said it's like the National Enquirer on steroids. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, everybody's kind of interested in it. What I've found in the presidential libraries, this is the Truman Library, here's the Eisenhower Library I've been to numerous times, here's the Kennedy Library. What I found when I went to the libraries, that a lot of the documents aren't there. There really is not much with the president. And what was very important with the president is that what you have is the most powerful man in the world working on what could be the most important subject in the world. I used to work on life after death, which I'm still fascinated in. That was my main interest. It led me to ufology. I think those are the 2 big issues, and ufology is like life after death. It is looking at what is basic reality. It is expanding your mind to figure out what's actually going on, what is real and what is not real. What I found when I went through the library is that the documents basically aren't there. Like this is a withdrawal notice for Reagan's toast to Gorbachev in Moscow, and you'll see that it's got a B1 exemption, and it protects disclosure for national security information concerning national defense or foreign policy. So they basically nailed this as top secret, and they're not going to declassify it. It's a toast to Gorbachev. Like what? I mean, if that is top secret and it's been withheld for 20 years, the UFO stuff is way down the line. And what I found is I couldn't find any documents in the presidential library, and I found some. Like how the Clintons, I got 1,000 pages. But I found that the presidents either don't know or it's so highly classified that you're not going to get it out of the president. Here's one they have, you know, they're very, just basically say this page is intentionally left blank. And what I did, and this came from, I told some of these people the story, as some of you may know, I was refused entry to the United States. I was going down to Los Angeles to give a lecture, and I was refused entry. And of course, when I came through Ireland, this time 45 minutes before my flight, I was actually sent through immigration for a second time. They said, you got to start over. I had to go back and go through the whole process, and just running through the terminal in London trying to get through. So I almost missed the second flight, which I didn't tell Betty. But I managed to make it before the plane took off. The Americans refused me, and the lecture I was going to give there was the 64 reasons the government has decided not to tell you what the UFO truth is. That's what I'm going to work on next. I think that's where the answers are, because what I found in studying UFOs was that when I looked in the presidential libraries and when I looked at people like Jimmy Carter, I realized that the people who are holding the secret are the same as you and I. They want what's best for their children and their grandchildren. These people actually think they're doing the right thing. And when I was in university, my major was political studies. I studied Russian government, and the whole thing was criminology. The Russian government is like ufology back in the 1970s. Basically, everything is secret, and you got to sit and read between the lines as to what's going on. And it was called criminology. You figure out who's getting fired, who's getting moved to the agriculture minister. And so basically, that's what I have started to do, is to look at what's behind it. And when you start to look, there are some fairly interesting reasons, and the idea is to think the way the government thinks. If you're going to get this out in the open, you've got to realize why they're withholding the UFO secret. That's what I'm working on now. I'm sort of moving away from the presidents, although I still do collect the stuff, and you'll see I have a tremendous amount of material on Barack Obama. Hopefully I get there. I don't want Betty ringing her bell and being halfway through and starting to cry. I want to make sure we get through, so let's move on. Bill Clinton was a president who, as you know, was with the Northern Ireland Peace. He worked a lot on that, and he's very interested in ufology. He has stated as much. Here's him at a nightclub called 2012, Mars 2012 in New York. He's been there a couple of times. He had taken his nephew here. He's posing with the alien. Here's Paul Davids, who produced the movie Roswell. And Paul Davids is famous. His father taught Bill Clinton at Georgetown University, so he had a connection to the Clintons. And he sent the Clintons in, this was 1996, he sent Bill and Hillary his Roswell movie, a bunch of Roswell books, and he also sent them this book by Schmidt and Randall on Roswell. And what happened was the Monica Lewinsky scandal occurred, and the FBI went into the president's personal library inside the Oval Office, and they were looking for this book. It was called Vox. It was a phone sex book that Monica Lewinsky had sent the president, and they were looking for the book. And so when they put the inventory of the books out with the Vox book, the book that was right next to it was the book that Paul Davids had sent. It was in the presidential private library inside the Oval Office. So Bill had it on his shelf. Now, Hillary Clinton was running for president. Paul Davids has this connection, and the new book on Roswell had come out, and Paul Davids decided he was going to get this new book to President Clinton. And he went out and he took this picture just to show that he was at a $15 million estate in the Hamptons, and it cost $5,000 to get in for a breakfast. And he wanted to prove that he was actually there with Hillary Clinton. So he took this picture, this is Paul Davids, and this is the book he wanted to get to him. And there was a bunch of sort of weird events that occurred that I don't want to get into it because it's time consuming, that he got direction to go there. Because you got to get through security with this book. And he wasn't stopped, nothing happened. And he was told that Bill will talk first, Hillary will talk second. As soon as Bill is finished, he's going to sit down along these windows here. Hillary's going to talk. As soon as Hillary's finished, that's when you go after Bill, because everybody's going to be talking to Hillary. That's what he did, and he gave Bill the book. Let's go back one. He gave Bill the book, and he said, Bill looked down at this Roswell book and said, you know, I'm absolutely fascinated in this stuff, and I'm going to read this book. So Bill, we know, was interested. Now, to set up the Irish event, as some of you may know, Lawrence Rockefeller, who's a billionaire, was very interested in UFOs, interested in the Roswell case, and had gone to the president to get him to declassify UFOs. And because he was a billionaire and a very powerful from the Rockefeller family, they really couldn't turn him away. In August 1995, he sat down with Bill and Hillary Clinton at his lodge in Wyoming, and he basically told them the UFO story. And what the report we got was the next morning, they didn't say anything. Next morning, Hillary came up and said, okay, we've listened to you, now don't ever bring up the subject again, because it's political dynamite. Hillary didn't want to deal with it. Here's an FOIA photograph I got. Here's Hillary greeting Rockefeller at the ranch. Now, John Gibbons was the science advisor. He was the one that was handling Lawrence Rockefeller's request. He didn't get to the president right away, so they handled him, and Gibbons tried to give him everything he wanted. And in a letter just before Rockefeller went to the ranch in Wyoming, Gibbons wrote, and he said, "I conferred with Sheila Whitnall, the Secretary of the Air Force, and she arranged for a complete revisiting of the Air Force of pertinent records, guaranteed amnesty to anyone who felt constrained to talk." So basically, the request to do the Roswell report in 1994, 1995 came from the White House. A lot of people say it was the Air Force suddenly decided to do it. It came from the White House. So the order comes out from the White House to reinvestigate. The Air Force comes out with a report. It was called the Roswell Report, and it basically said, nothing to this, mogul balloon, lost the files, you know, the whole, you know, snow story that they put out. And basically what happened was in November 1995, Bill Clinton got the report. And my impression was that he was furious. I don't know this for a fact, but I think he was furious. And what happened is he comes to Belfast, Northern Ireland in late November 1995, and he's lighting the Christmas tree in Belfast. And in this, I'll play you the clip where he talks about it, and basically you'll hear him challenge the Air Force, because you'll see that the first Roswell report, there was 2 Roswell reports, which people don't know. The first Roswell report didn't talk about the bodies. He gets the report in 1995, he comes to Belfast, and this is a major speech here. There was 80,000 people at this speech. This is from the Belfast City Council. They provided me this. This is a promo that the speech they produced. And you can see there was a lot of people. This was a major speech made by Bill Clinton. And what I can remind you of is that nothing goes in a presidential speech that doesn't belong there. There are usually 25 or 30 agencies have to sign off on the speech. A State of the Union speech will be rewritten 30 times. It doesn't get in there by accident. So Bill Clinton comes out and he makes this following statement. This is late 1995.
I got a letter from 13-year-old Ryan from Belfast. Now, Ryan, if you're out in the crowd tonight, here's the answer to your question. No. As far as I know, an alien spacecraft did not crash in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. And Ryan, if the United States Air Force did recover alien bodies, they didn't tell me about it either, and I want to know.
So the first Roswell report doesn't talk about the bodies, and Clinton basically comes out with this speech, and he challenges the Air Force. He said, I want to know about the bodies. Explain the bodies. People are identifying bodies. So in 1997, the Air Force comes out with another report, and the report is the stupid thing about the bodies. Dropping the dummies out of the planes in 1953, 7 years later, whatever, and that's the answer from the way Air Force back to the president. Here's the answer to the story about the bodies, the challenge. And they basically walked around Clinton. This is a clip. I wasn't going to include it, but it's very important because it's going to link into Barack Obama. I don't know how many people have seen National Treasure, the second movie about the Book of Secrets. This is from 1995. I've known this is around. This is the only copy. This is not public. We got this copy from an inside source. This is not public. The Clintons haven't released it. And here he talks about, you'll hear him talking about Area 51. He doesn't call it Area 51. I'll explain that in a second. But here's him talking about the basic idea. Is there a book of secrets that the president has? So I'll play this clip. It's very interesting. We managed to get this a couple of months ago, and you can get this on YouTube.
I'm wondering, from president to president, whether you pass a list along of secrets that only you, a couple of President Bush Sr., President Bush, Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford, like where's Jimmy Hoffa, or what really happened at Roswell. So without giving away any state secrets, is there something we can all look forward to in the future to read about that you know that we don't know that will really make the National Enquirer required reading?
I don't know if you all remember this, but there was actually, when I was president my second term, there was an anniversary observance of Roswell. You remember that? People came to Roswell, New Mexico from all over the world. And there's also a site in Nevada where people were convinced that the government had buried a UFO and perhaps an alien deep underground because we wouldn't allow anybody to go there. And I can say now, because it's now been released into the public domain, I had so many people in my own administration who were convinced that Roswell was a fraud, but this place in Nevada was really serious. There was an alien artifact there. So I actually sent somebody there to figure it out. And it was actually just a secret defense installation, alas, and doing boring work that we just didn't want anybody else to see. So I can't think of that.
So that means there's a list or no list?
What? What'd you say?
I was just joking. The list,
You should have said, I don't know what you said, but you should have said there's absolutely no risk of that. Given my misspent youth, I'm lucky to be here now.
What I didn't say was that there really is no list, or there is a list. The secrets.
If there is one, I don't know it. I mean, the Roswell thing, I think, really was an illusion. I don't think it happened. I mean, I think there are rational explanations that I have succeeded, and I did attempt to find out if there were any secret government documents that reveal things, and if there were, they were concealed from me too. I wouldn't be the first president that underlings have lied to or that career bureaucrats have waited out. But there may be some career person sitting around somewhere hiding these dark secrets even from elected presidents. But if so, they successfully eluded me, and I'm almost embarrassed to tell you I did try to find out.
Well, that...
Okay, what we should note on this is the fact that he doesn't mention Area 51. I'll explain that. The other thing I forgot to mention, and I often forget it in lectures, the reason the president is so important is cockroaches like you and I can believe in this kind of stuff. But if the most powerful man in the world is being briefed, and if you ever get a chance, Hillary apparently is coming to Ireland shortly, if you ever get a chance to deal with a top person, a president, vice president, and I talked to Cheney about, I got Cheney on the line one time about this, the question is, have you ever been briefed? Because if the president of the United States is talking about it, if he's dealing with the subject, it's nothing unimportant. The stuff that gets to the president is very important. So the president is dealing with it. If the president is being briefed, then it's for real. And that's why I spend so much time on the president, is to see, is the president actually dealing? And the fact that the president's even talking about it is significant. Now, he talks about Area 51. You'll see these are, I've requested a bunch of documents. I got 30,000 pages under review with the Clinton Library because I got 1,000 pages when he was in office, and we know who all the people are. We know who all the people were involved in the UFO stuff. So we basically requested their files. We requested speech files. We requested all sorts of stuff. And these are sort of a list of all the things that I requested. You'll see Area 51, 370 pages. They actually released 450, and they withheld about 125. The second thing that he was very interested in, Clinton was fascinated with the Kennedys, and you'll see he did another Kennedy assassination investigation, and I have thousands of pages of documents. They have not been released yet, but I was the first person to request those. Now, the Area 51 stuff, when it came, it was basically nonsense. They released, you'll see this is the letter that they sent, all the stuff that they withheld, 79 pages for this and 23 for national security and all this sort of stuff. But the reason that Clinton didn't talk about Area 51 is because of memos like this. This is memos going inside the Clinton White House. And one person's asking for a memo, and then the other person writes, Mary Ellen brought this over to the general this morning. By the way, you should not call this Area 51. It's not correct, and there was a court ruling about it, and this term should not be used. So they're still playing the game. They can call it anything they want, but they won't call it Area 51 because that has the UFO connotation. So that's why Clinton didn't use it. He's still playing the game. Now, the Barack Obama stuff I've got a lot of stuff. Hopefully we get through it all. Let's quickly go. This is an alien. It's a famous story. One of these days I'll tell the whole story. It's a long story that goes back many years. The alien's name is Palad. It's the Weekly World News alien in the United States, and he's correctly predicted every president for about 25 years or something. So, of course, he's backing Obama. And then just before the end of the election, just before Obama won, they came out with a thing that said he had changed and he was now picking John McCain. And what you got to realize in the presidential election, at the end of the election, everybody goes to Roswell because New Mexico is a swing state. So just before the election, 2 days before the election, or the day before the election, John McCain goes to Roswell, and he's trying to swing Roswell, the 5 votes of Roswell, to get the state. And he actually talks about the fact that he's now got the alien endorsement. So here's the little clip I'll play for you.
By the way, I've been here to Roswell before, and I know of the alien landing, and I am pleased to announce that I've received the alien endorsement. So how can I not do it?
On my website, you'll see we've actually started to put the audios. I have a collection of audios from all the different presidents and campaign people. There's a lot of people who are campaigners that I've got audios that we're putting up. When I was coming to Ireland, my mother's a big fan. I was never a big fan of Barack Obama. I'm sort of getting used to him now, but when I was coming to Ireland, I decided I need Barack to give a message to Ireland because you guys had released some UFO files, and I said I'm talking about UFOs and Barack Obama. So I sent it to him, and this is all he would really say in reply.
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
I don't know. I guess you have to have seen American commercials. Everything was you actually had to approve it because there were so many commercials you didn't know whether the guy was actually it was him or somebody against him running a commercial on his behalf. This is Chris Rock, who's a famous black politician, on Larry King. It's kind of an interesting little intro here.
Tell us what'll happen if Obama wins. Give us the first day.
Oh, you asking me?
Well,
no, you asking me because I'm black? Or you just asking me? I don't know. I'm sure he'll check to see if we really have UFOs. That's what I would do.
That's the first thing.
That's the first thing I do. Where the UFOs at?
That's got nothing to do with black.
Obama picks, as I said, I was co-authored a book with Steve Bassett, so I'm quite familiar with the disclosure argument. And when Obama was coming, the UFO community, I don't know about here, but in North America, the community was very watching very closely who he was picking, who he wasn't picking. And people are saying, he's picking this guy because he's going to disclose. And so I went through all the picks of the people he picked and the people he didn't pick and looked at it in terms of disclosure, and you can make up your own mind. One of the people he didn't pick was General Wesley Clark. And as I said, if you ever get a chance to get a high-ranking person, the question you ask them is, have you ever been briefed on the subject? Anybody ever come into your office officially and tell you what's going on? The briefing is the truth. Clark he was a security advisor, a military advisor to Obama, and has a UFO background, was not picked. Dennis Kucinich was not picked. He's very famous, having had the UFO sighting, close encounter sighting at Shirley MacLaine's house with Shirley MacLaine's bodyguard and the bodyguard's girlfriend. He wasn't picked, but I think the reason he wasn't picked because he's a little bit off the wall on a lot of subjects. Here's for people who are into orbs. One of the researchers in the United States sent me. He was at a function for Obama or for Kucinich, and all these orb photographs turned up. I just have a couple of them. Zbigniew Brzezinski was National Security Advisor to Carter. He was an advisor to Obama, National Security Advisor, and he was not picked, possibly because he's too old. I mean, he's getting on there. He's sort of in the Henry Kissinger thing, guy that would know everything. The people that he did pick, now this is looking in terms of disclosure, will he disclose, won't he? The one person he picked for vice president is Joe Biden. If you were going to disclose UFOs, why would you pick this guy? Listen to this.
Let me go to Kucinich. I was struck tonight by Dennis Kucinich, who's not really in the front running for the office of the presidency. Perhaps luckily, I don't know, but tonight he said he has seen a UFO. We then had Governor Richardson come on this show, and Governor Richardson said the federal government is operating in ways that breed suspicion. There's a conspiracy to keep us from seeing UFOs or knowing about their existences in New Mexico. I agree. I'm asking you, do you agree? Do you believe in UFOs? It's an odd question, but there seems to be a pattern here.
I've never met Dennis Kucinich, and I don't know Governor Richardson. Look, no, I don't think there's UFOs, and no, I don't think that they're government. I mean, what the heck are we talking about here? I mean, this has gone downhill real quick.
No.
He's kind of skeptical. When Clinton was in the Oval Office, his first CIA director was James Woolsey. James Woolsey had a daylight sighting with his wife in the New Hampshires in the late 60s. He initiated a new UFO study. It came out in 1997. It was a whitewash report. One of the people who worked on it was John Brennan, who's the National Security Advisor to Obama. And he was involved in that study. And he wrote, in the final report, he wrote, this author found almost no documentation on agency involvement with UFOs in the 1980s. So he's another guy that is a top guy who doesn't seem to be wanting to play disclosure. Bill Richardson has made a number of statements. He did make some very negative statements. For example, he said, I'm in New Mexico. I've got to be in favor of UFOs. It's tourism. And this is from the Rose Bowl parade. They won the big float award at the Rose Bowl parade. But I'm going to play you a clip, which is a very important clip. Richardson, who was picked as the Commerce Secretary, got into a scandal, had to withdraw. But here's him talking about UFOs at the Dell Computer Corporation.
You made some really intriguing comments in a book in the last few years. Came out regarding the 1947 alleged ET UFO crash. And I was very interested. You said that you didn't feel like the government had come clear with this message, and you felt like there needed to be a little bit more research into that. And if I elected president, are you going to do that? Is that one of your plans to look into that? And I apologize.
Yeah, well, you know, look, I've been in government, I've been in the cabinet, I've been in the Congress. I've always felt the government doesn't tell the truth as much as it should on a lot of issues. You know, we have some national security, privacy issues I think should be more open. I've always felt that. And I did feel that. This was the Roswell aliens, in case he was very polite, he didn't say that. But you know, yeah, because I remember asking, I had my constituents ask me, and I was a congressman. I said, well, Department of Defense, Los Alamos Labs, what is this? What is the data you have? Oh, it's classified. Well, that ticked me off. So that's what that reflects what I said then. You know, I also believe that we've got to find a way to open up our secrecy and privacy laws. So many things are classified. Although I do respect the human being's right to privacy. What do you want me to do? You want me to open up all those files? Or?
Well, I mean, we know that Carter tried, and we know that Clinton worked a little bit with Lawrence Rockefeller on it. But I was just wondering, you know, what are you? A lot of people are kind of afraid to look into it, so I just wondered if that was something.
Sure, I'll work with you on
that. Hillary Clinton, of course, is the big one. And if you go to my website, Hillary Clinton website, you'll see her involvement. She was picked as Secretary of State. Here's her talking about the alien invasion, which actually goes back to Canada. 1957, would become the Prime Minister, talked about the alien invasion when he won the Nobel Prize. So the alien invasion idea goes back to 1957. Here's Hillary Clinton during the campaign for president talking about the alien invasion.
There's so much we can do if we work together as a world. You know, remember that movie Independence Day where invaders were coming from outer space and the whole world was united against the invasion? Well, why can't we be united on behalf of our planet? And that's what I want to do, to get more and more people to understand that and be involved to protect our environment.
John Podesta is the big one. How many people don't know who John Podesta is? Okay, John Podesta is the key brain behind Obama. He was the guy that helped pick all the people in his cabinet. If you take a look at a lot of the people who are in his cabinet, they're people from John Podesta's Institute in Washington, D.C. He was the chief of staff for Bill Clinton. He was known as the X-Files man inside the Clinton White House. He's fascinated with the X-Files. And he is one of the key brains. The energy policy that Obama has, basically, if you see Podesta's, it's exactly the same thing. The whole openness thing. John Podesta is big into opening up the government. When he was with Bill Clinton, they put out an executive order in 1995, and they forced out 800 million pages of documents, declassified under the Clinton administration. That came from Podesta. He's a very powerful guy, and he is one of the key people, and that was being thrown around, that because he had John Podesta picking his cabinet, they were going to disclose.
Time to find out what the truth really is that's out there. We ought to do it really because it's right. We ought to do it because the American people, quite frankly, can handle the truth. And we ought to do it because it's the law.
That was a statement that was made by him in a sci-fi news conference. TV had sort of backed a group down there, and he came out and said that it's time to open up the UFO secrets. This was in 2002. And this really got the UFO community in North America excited that there was going to be disclosure. So, of course, because I had filed all this stuff at the Clinton Library, I started to go after the Podesta stuff. I've got a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests, and this is the Clinton Library. Here's the file boxes they keep it in. Here's the building on the back side where they keep all the files, and there's about 115 million pages of files. And here's the research room. They just started releasing files, so of course there's nobody in the research room. The one I was going after that I pushed when I was there, and actually I went in there and everybody knew who I was. It was like, oh, we know you. Because what had happened was, I know the way the Freedom of Information Act works in the United States, first come, first serve. And I knew 5 years after they were going to release, so I had all my Freedom of Information Act requests, and so all the UFO stuff was at the front. So this stuff started being released. The Washington Post picked it up, Associated Press. Judicial Watch, a big group there, was very upset. They wanted Hillary's files, and they were upset that the UFO stuff was being released. But the one I was after, and I was at the library, I wanted this one, and this is the one about John Podesta's 50th birthday. When John Podesta had a 50th birthday in the White House, they had an X-Files birthday party for him. The X-Files sang happy birthday on a video, and Bill and Hillary dressed up like the X-Files. So of course I asked for all the video and all the photographs from that birthday party. And basically they came back to me after a long push. They came back and said 84 photographs and 1 videotape have been restricted in whole in compliance with the restrictions of the FOA. So they basically said you're getting nothing. We're withholding it all because of personal privacy. So I've got an appeal in. It's been in for about 6 months. I said, the White House is not a private place. It's paid for by American money. The film was paid for by American money. It was a public function, and John Podesta and the President and the First Lady were public people. They don't have privacy provisions. And so we're going to see what they say. I would bet they're going to say no and force, because they'll just force you to try to spend some money and take them to court. But I wanted all this stuff with Bill and Hillary dressing up and hosting this X-Files birthday party. A lot of stuff has gone around. Here's Out of the Blue, which I think is on the History Channel in the next day or two. This is Fox, James Fox, and he talks about a possible disclosure effort with Podesta.
I can't give it all to you, but I'll give some of it to you. Some people quite close to him have contacted me about a movement that's happening. I have not been totally invited or included on this, but my contacts have, and they're doing it through me with a couple people. So there is some things that they alluded to, but that's what's happening.
And that's Angela Joyner, my co-author, talking, and basically what happens is I get the guest, I tell her, get this guest, and here's the questions. So we set up all these people with questions, so that was the one. And then she got on, this is another statement here. This is a spokesman for the American Progress Institute, which is his big institute, and they asked him whether John Podesta was going to disclose the UFO thing, and he basically said he hasn't talked to Obama about it. This is Leslie Keane. It was another one. I got Angela to interview her, and I gave her all the questions. And of course, we got into Podesta because she's very close to Podesta. She actually was very upset at me with my Hillary website. Told me it was embarrassing. I should take it down because she's close to Bill and Hillary Clinton, and this was sort of, I think, getting in her way. But anyway, Fox was on, and he says, yeah, there is a disclosure, and Leslie Keane comes on and says exactly the opposite, and they're actually working together. So here's what she's got to say.
You know, I've been wanting to kind of clarify for people John Podesta's role in all of this, because there's a lot of talk that goes on about John Podesta, you know, among people that seem to think that he's some very important figure in this whole UFO effort. Mm-hmm. And you know, the bottom line is that the only reason he ever made the statement he made in 2002, which is the one that everybody quotes about, you know, the truth, people can handle the truth.
Yeah, and we should release it because it's the law.
Exactly, and it was a beautiful statement. But he was basically invited by our group to attend this press conference specifically in support of our Freedom of Information Act.
So she's basically saying, no, Podesta is not, he's not sitting in Obama's office. She actually said he's not sitting in Obama's office and bringing up UFOs. This is an important story that we're still working on. We're trying to get Clayman on Angela's show. Clayman is this Judicial Watch that went after me when Clinton Library started releasing the UFO files. There are a group of lawyers in Washington who are, they almost brought the Clintons down. They go after and they try to make sure the government is on the level, that they're telling the truth and that they're releasing documents. Clayman used to be the head of that group. And Clayman has now come forward and says he believes they're UFO documents, and to heck with the Freedom of Information Act and all this kind of stuff, let's just take him to court right away. He's a very, very powerful man in the United States. And we are trying to get in contact with him and see how he's making out. This could break it. Clayman is a very powerful guy, and he's taken the American government to court on UFOs. Podesta's positives. I'll go through these quickly because some of these you'll know. He made a science statement, which was very positive in terms of, not in terms of, well, he didn't mention UFOs, but in terms of honesty in science, doing it the way it should be done, being honest about what your results are. Very positive statement. He made this just before he was elected. Just when he got elected, he brought out a new memorandum for Freedom of Information Act. He basically stated that it's a basic principle of government that you should put out what you've got. And everybody in the UFO community, I know in North America, got excited. Like, here it is. He's going to disclose UFOs because he set this thing up about the Freedom of Information Act. The other thing he did was when Bush was there, it was sort of killed my research. Bush basically said that any president can withhold all his files, and his children can withhold the files, any files they want. And Obama just said, no, it's not going to happen, change the rule. And now the presidents don't control their files anymore. It's the government that can release it. The president doesn't have any control. So that was a very positive indication. Now here's all the different times that Obama has faced the UFO question. This is Gary McKinnon. Here's the mother and the lawyer appealing to Obama.
I have today sent a letter to President Barack Obama, signed by 40 members of a cross-parliamentary group of MPs, asking him to step in to bring this shameful episode to an end. It is a sad state of affairs if this government can't protect our most vulnerable of citizens.
Gary has always denied the damage. I appeal to Obama and to Gordon Brown. Do they want the first computer hacker ever to be extradited to be a guy looking for UFOs who has Asperger's syndrome, who admitted to computer misuse without any lawyer and without one being present? It's not really a very good example, is it? It's not going to really make them look very good in the eyes of the world.
So they made the appeal, and the basic end of the story was the White House basically ignored it. They have not commented. Here's Obama's spokesman. This happened after Steve Bassett, 2007, I think it was, the X conference. Steve was appealing to all the media to challenge, to release the government-imposed truth embargo on UFOs. So the Washington Post actually went around to the different campaigns and asked Obama's spokesman, and Obama's spokesman said, we're more focused on lifting the government-imposed truth embargo on issues like the war in Iraq. So they walked around the question. Here is, let's set this up properly here. Here's Obama. This is a Philadelphia 2007 presidential debate. He's asked a question about life in outer space, Barack Obama.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Senator Obama a question in the same line. The 3 astronauts of Apollo 11 who went to the moon back in 1969 all said that they believe there is life beyond Earth. Do you agree?
You know, I don't know, and I don't presume to know. What I know is there is life here on Earth, and that we're not attending to life here on Earth. We're not taking care of kids.
So basically he walks around the question. Now he's asked by, we believe this is a Chicago reporter, he's asked the direct UFO question. Here's how he answers.
If you are elected and you learned that the government knew aliens had visited Earth and the public didn't know, would you want the public, would you sure the public found out?
Well, it depends on what these aliens were like, and whether they were Democrats or Republicans.
And that's the way politicians usually deal with it. They usually deal with it by humor, because you can use UFOs in humor and get away with it. So they use humor to walk around it. Here's this is a beer commercial in the United States. We went for beer last night, so you guys will like this. It's basically using the principle of UFOs and comedy.
You're really biting today, Don.
It's all about the lure.
Dude? And I think it's about time.
Oh, they're really biting today, Zorak. Yeah, it's all about the lure.
Refreshingly smooth Bud Light. Always worth it.
Hey, dude, take my picture.
This is the White House has opened up a sort of an open initiative, a site where people can talk to the government. And this is Beth is the girl who runs it, and of course UFOs is up there on the list. The number one issues are legalization of marijuana and where's Barack Obama's birth certificate. But UFOs is pretty high up there. And this is the site, Open Government Dialogue, and here you can see one person's asking, and you can sort of, people can input on this site, and my impression was it's supposed to be used by the government to get ideas of what should we do next. But basically, this is Beth said, even people who want to talk about UFOs or the Kennedy assassination, we have created a forum for people to have a conversation with each other and potentially go off and organize and develop this further. And I sort of thought the site was to get them to do something, but she basically sets this up, and then she puts the hammer down and basically knocks UFOs out by saying the ideas that received the most organized support were not necessarily the most viable suggestions. So even if UFOs was #1 on the website, they still wouldn't do anything. I mentioned before that Bill Clinton was indirectly asked a question about the Book of Secrets. This happened just a little while ago. Barack Obama is actually asked, is there a Book of Secrets about UFOs and this kind of stuff? And this was on a conservative radio talk show in Philadelphia.
My boys wanted me to ask you, they saw the movie National Treasure 2, and they know that you've been provided the Book of Secrets.
I have.
And they wanted to know which of the secrets most impressed you.
I would tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
Right.
So.
I get the impression you've seen the movie
Absolutely.
too.
And I don't want you messing with my Resolute desk, you know, with all the gizmos.
Again, you handle difficult issues with humor. One of the interesting stories that's related to this, the star in the movie was Nicolas Cage. He has a UFO background. I'll just play the clips. He had a story about Shirley MacLaine. He's friends with Shirley MacLaine. And here's what, this is a friend of mine, sent a question in to Larry King about Nicolas Cage and what he claimed Shirley MacLaine had told him.
Good evening, Larry and Shirley. Hi. About 2 weeks ago, Nicolas Cage was on the Letterman show and said that Shirley had told him that President Carter had told her he had seen recovered alien spacecraft and aliens in the hangar. Could you tell me exactly what President Carter said?
This is 1995. I tried to get that Letterman. I managed to get the Larry King episode. I could not, for the life of me, find the Letterman episode where Cage says this. This is Shirley MacLaine's response on Larry King.
He didn't tell me that, but he told me many times that when I first rode out on a limb, that he would support me, that it was true, that there were occupants. Why should we be the only people in the universe? He wanted to shine the sunshine laws on intelligence, to expose it, to see how the people would react, but he didn't and wouldn't and couldn't, as he explained to me.
And he couldn't. That's what she said. Jimmy Carter told her he couldn't. The other interesting idea is the Book of Secrets, according to the movie, is in the Library of Congress. There are two buildings. There's a Jefferson building, and there is the Madison building. A very famous UFO incident occurred in the Madison building, almost the same as the Book of Secrets. And it's a good Irish man, Danny Sheehan, who was a very prominent civil rights attorney, trained out of Harvard, defended John Mack when Harvard tried to throw him out. He specialized in a UFO study for Jimmy Carter. And he was chief counsel to Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project. And his story was that when Jimmy Carter first got into office, he was requested to do a study. It was part of a study on ETs and UFOs for Jimmy Carter, and that he said in order to work on the study, he would have to be provided with the classified Blue Book files. And Marcia Smith, who was running it for the Library of Congress, said, well, I don't think we can do that. And then she called him back and said, yeah, we've got him. And he went to the Library of Congress, to the Madison building, in the basement of the Madison building, and that's where he tells the story that he was going through the microfilm rolls and he found a picture of a crashed flying saucer with all the Air Force people around it, and he's maintained it had the little hieroglyphs on the side, and I actually saw him in San Francisco actually draw the hieroglyphs. He's got it, he traced it, but it's a very interesting story, and it basically ties in with his Book of Secrets idea that at the Library of Congress they have this book. This is a story, a very interesting story. It's just developed. We're still developing the story. This is a story about Barack Obama going to Area 51 or to Nellis. This happened in May of this year. This is a picture of Las Vegas. Here's the picture of the motorcade, and I'll quickly move to the motorcade picture. A lot of people, you hear stories about the president. He went to see alien bodies, he did this, he did that. You take a look at the size of this motorcade, and believe me, it takes a lot to move the president around. You can see the size of the motorcade. Even when Eisenhower was president, he had 250 people travel with him when he moved around. So it's very hard to sort of hide the president. When the president's moving around, people sort of know it. And the story was here that he had been to Area 51, to Nellis, and that they had shown him UFO stuff. So this is a story that we went after. I ran into a woman I was lecturing in Roswell a few months ago. She came and was telling this story, and she said she had gotten a picture of the motorcade, and that somebody had gotten a photograph of a UFO at Area 51 when Barack Obama was there. That was the story I was chasing. So here's him at Nellis, and the reason that the reason he gave a speech on solar energy at Nellis Air Force Base, where Area 51 is housed, and he stayed at the Caesar's Palace. This is sort of the room where I stay when I'm sort of there. It's 21,000 square feet. This is the entryway into Barack Obama's room. It's not called the presidential speech, but they may change it. Here's his little dining room table. And here's the window overlooking Las Vegas. Here's another sitting room. Here's another one. Here's his office that they gave, that's part of this 21,000 square foot. And this is the critical one. They have a balcony. So the idea was, and this is where I've gotten the story now, they did test an object, and there's a guy by the name of Colonel X at Nellis who claims that he knows when they're testing alien technology. And he came out on the internet and said on May the 27th they tested technology, and he put the photographs on the internet. This is the photograph that he took, and he warned everybody that they were going to test. This is above Las Vegas. They test this thing. It's up very high. And Bill Burns, who runs UFO Magazine, went out, did an article, and he said, this is for real. We went out, we had the cameras and all this sort of stuff, and he said that when he phoned his wife to say this is absolutely amazing, the thing blinked out. And he was told by his NSA sources that it was an NSA platform. But the colonel says it's alien technology. Now the question was, Barack Obama was there on the 26th. They tested this on the morning of the 27th. I tried to get a hold of the colonel and say, did they test on the morning of the 26th as well? Because if they did, Barack Obama could easily have watched it from the balcony at the Caesar's Palace. Now the story was that he had done it. We're still working on this story. And the woman actually showed me another photograph that was exactly the same. She had taken a photograph. There's all these sort of paranormal things that sort of happen. And it very much does look like the same photograph that was taken by Colonel X when Barack Obama was at the Nellis site. This is, I think, I've always said, this is one of my most important slides. If you're looking at what the government is going to do, if you're looking at whether there's going to be disclosure, this is the slide you've got to listen to. This is Jeremiah Wright, who was Obama's pastor for 20 years. He knows Obama like the back of his hand, and he knows I used to think this guy was crazy. Now I think he's like a real smart guy. Here's him talking. He was sort of outed by Obama. He was causing Obama trouble, and Obama dumped this guy. And here's them asking a question just before he was dumped about what Barack Obama is saying to him. Apply this to UFOs. This, I think, is the truth of what's going on if you want politicians to disclose. Listen to what Wright says.
What is your motivation for characterizing Senator Obama's response to you as, quote, what a politician had to say? What do you mean by that?
What I mean is what several of my white friends and several of my white Jewish friends have written me and said to me. They said, you're a Christian. You understand forgiveness. We both know that if Senator Obama did not say what he said, he would never get elected. Politicians say what they say and do what they do based on electability, based on sound bites, based on polls, Huffington, whoever's doing the polls. Preachers say what they say because they're pastors. They have a different person to whom they're accountable. As I said, whether he gets elected or not, I'm still going to have to be answerable to God November 5th and January 21st. That's what I mean. I do what pastors do. He does what politicians do. I am not running for office. I am open to being vice president.
Here's a further example. When Obama was elected, there was 100 churches in Washington offered to be his church. And the whole idea behind this was that they want the prestige of having the president go to their church. All these people were screened. All their speeches, all the pastor speeches were screened back for years because they didn't want to have another situation like we're right where you had to answer for the president. The same thing is if a president comes out and basically acknowledges UFOs or takes your side, all the crazies like me or whoever that say stupid things in ufology, they're going to go to Obama and say, well, this person said this. What do you say about that? They don't want to step on this sort of issue because there's people in the field that will kill them. That's one of the 64 reasons. And you'll see that it happened. They're very concerned not only about the president's safety in terms of being shot, but his safety in terms of the people he hangs around with and the ideas that he supports. Obama the Messiah. This is the whole idea that there was a bunch of things happened before Obama became president, UFO related, that seemed to indicate, yeah, UFOs are on this guy's side. I'm going to quickly run through these. First one was Bruce Springsteen, a famous musician, a rock concert that he held for Barack Obama, support fundraiser, and here he is, and here at the conference, I don't know if you can see it, 4 UFOs show up. And so you had the 4 UFOs, and people figured, well, you know, it's a Barack Obama concert, and the UFOs are there. Orbs. This is the night he was elected at Grant Park in Chicago. And I've talked to a woman who's an orb expert, says there's a bunch more photographs, but I haven't got those yet. This is the most critical one. This is one you've probably seen. This is the CNN video on Inauguration Day, just before the president is inaugurated. You'll see an object coming
of the world,
from the right
to the Muslim
to the
world,
left.
He had a double message.
I'll show you when it's coming. It comes from the bottom right and it runs across. There it goes there.
And slaughtering innocents. We say to you.
So it was picked up by the ufology community and said here was a UFO that appeared. And here it is. Some people said it was a bird. It's kind of a strange looking bird. The big question was, did it go behind the monument or in front of the monument? If it went in front of the monument, it could be a small object. If it goes behind the monument at that point is 50 feet across. So there was a bunch of people who did photographic analysis, and it does appear that the object does go behind it, which means it's a big object. You can see it there. And here's another one. This was a speech that he did in Henderson, just outside of Las Vegas. A UFO appeared at one of his speeches, and MSNBC, one guy put it on the internet. You'll see it just coming into the... There it is there. And so these kind of things gave the UFO community indications that the UFOs were on Barack Obama's side. But Barack Obama, and we're getting near the end here, Barack Obama, one thing that I've sort of warned people about is Barack Obama really is not that interested in outer space. He's made a number of statements. Here's one to the Houston Chronicle where he talks about the end of manned spaceflight, that he favors robotic rather than manned spaceflight. Oh, here. Put back the space shuttle ends next year, and the new ship that was coming on, he delayed it 5 years in order to pay for his education program, which means after the space shuttle, there would be no manned space flight in the United States for 10 years. You'd have to hitchhike with the Russians for 10 years.
Obama did express some reservations about human spaceflight when he talked to the editorial board of the Houston Chronicle recently. The Chronicle provided this recording.
I think it is important for us to inspire through the space program, but also to have a practical sense of what investments deliver the most scientific and technological spin-offs, and not just assume that a human space exploration with actually sending bodies into space is always the best investment.
And this is something that's haunted him. This is a senator, a Democratic senator from Florida who's feeling the heat, and he's actually been out fighting again, and he went to Obama and said, we got a problem here, because these are the people that are going to end up losing their jobs, and he went to Obama. Here's what he said, and this is he's in Obama's party.
Senator Bill Nelson is a Democrat from Florida who once flew on the space shuttle.
I, of course, went to see him, and he said, well, you know I'm a fan of the space program. And I said, well, that's not what your policy is. He said, I'll get that corrected.
But basically, nothing's really happened yet. This is a letter that, after that happened, somebody from the Stevensville area, where all the big flap occurred last year, wrote him a letter, and he actually wrote back a fairly interesting letter. He said, "Thank you for to express your concerns about extraterrestrials and unidentified flying objects. I agree with you that space research is," and he goes on, but basically he doesn't put the idea down. He basically seems that if there was a motion, he would actually support it, and that's a major senator in Florida. And here's my final slide, and this is, people always ask me about disclosure, and I always say disclosure is like anything else. When the time is right, it will happen. And that disclosure, getting the UFO thing out, is no different than any other social or political movement in the world. Women didn't get the right to vote. Hillary talked about this. 1848, women started to try to get the right to vote. It didn't happen until 1917. Gay rights, every major issue, environmental issues. They were issues that took 20, 30 years, and people sweated and fought and protested on the Washington Mall. That's how it's going to happen. I think disclosure is like any other political, economic issue that you have to fight for it. It's our job in ufology. It's not the government's job to hand it to us on a plate. It's up to us to force the government to release it. And my final slide is Barack Obama talking about this, and listen to what he says about if you want change, if you want openness, here's how you do it. Oh, it's not going to work. Basically, he said, if you want change, you can't wait for somebody else to do it, and you can't wait for some other time. We are the generation we've been waiting for, and that's what I say to the UFO community. We are the people who have to make it happen. We are the ones, it is our job, the same as any other political or movement, to do the work, to get it out, and when the time is right, disclosure will take place. Thank you.
But if anybody would like to ask a question of any of the other speakers, or for Grant, we take just maybe 6 questions. Anybody? Go ahead.
Several presidents say they saw UFOs. Reagan, Jimmy Carter, and maybe
Reagan had 3 sightings. Jimmy Carter had 1, and we've become aware of a second sighting that occurred on his plane when he was in Panama. It was filmed, but apparently Jimmy Carter didn't see it. There's a story that Eisenhower saw a UFO. The documentation is kind of, and there's the story that Kennedy saw a UFO. The documentation is kind of iffy. But, when I was in Little Rock, not Little Rock, I lecture every year in Eureka Springs, which is in Arkansas, which is Clinton home country. A woman came up to me, and she was an older lady. She was in her 60s, and said, "I know why Bill and Hillary are interested. They had a sighting." And I said, "They what? They had a sighting?" And she said, "Yeah, her sister owned the famous restaurant. It's a barbecue restaurant in Hot Springs where Bill and Hillary hung out. And Bill and Hillary talked about this restaurant. She said her sister owns the restaurant. And she said it was either Bill and Hillary had a sighting there or somebody very close to Bill and Hillary, and that's why they're interested in the UFO phenomena." And I said to her, like I'm stupid, like I gave her my business card, and I said, "Do you promise that you'll write me and tell me the details?" She says, "Oh yeah, I promise." I said, "Are you sure?" And I instead of getting her name, and I've been trying to find this woman for about 3 years now, and the guy who runs the conference can't. But there are a number of stories about people having sightings, presidents. Yeah.
Donald Reagan's up in the United Nations made that speech, didn't he?
Yeah, he actually did that on about 5 or 6 occasions. He did it in Gorbachev when he was giving a toast in the Soviet Union. He did it at a high school in Maryland where he winged it. It wasn't in a speech. That's what I do when I go to the president's library. I look at the speeches and I try to find out how did it get in the speech. And the Maryland, it wasn't in the speech. And the other interesting, if you go to my website on the Reagan site, you'll see where the speech is actually in there, and he writes it. And it was weird. You had these weird things happen. It was at the end of the day. It was about 3 minutes before the library closed, and I'm looking for something, and I asked the archivist, I said, is this Ronald Reagan's handwriting? And she says, no, it's not. I'll show you how. And she's going through my file, and she opens it up, and she says, this is Ronald Reagan's handwriting here. And I look, and it's the alien invasion remark. It says, if creatures from another planet were to invade the Earth. And I couldn't believe it. It was like she pointed to the alien invasion speech, and I'm looking at this. And so I've got it on the website where you can actually see it. And what happened was they took it out of the speech. They pulled it from the speech, and Reagan wrote back on a thing. He said, oh, sorry, can you put he called it my fantasy. Can you put it back in? So they actually put it back in the speech, but it was pulled by the speechwriters.
On the United Nations one, he stood up and said, isn't there an alien presence?
Already among us, yes. And the question was, does that mean, aliens, or does that mean something else? But he made the same statement about 5 or 6 times.
And then he pushed for Star Wars, didn't he?
Yeah, but Reagan was sort of very flexible, and he believed the alien invasion thing. So you'd have people like Teller and people convincing him that, yeah, you should. I mean, these aliens are maybe attack us. In fact, I think that's one of the key reasons why the government won't disclose, because they really don't know.
Yeah, Vernon von Braun's secretary stood up with the Stephen Greer disclosure project at the House of Representatives press club and said that they would use this as a form of globalization.
Yeah. And that is a fear inside the government. For example, one of the reasons I say, if you're the president, and I was asking people that were working on abductions here, abductions is a critical one. If you're the president, are you going to stand up and say, they're abducting people all over the place and there's nothing we can do about it? And then you add the MILAVs, the military abduction stuff, which is definitely going on, which is the U.S. military, black ops people, taking abductee people, re-abducting them, drugging them, and trying to get out of them what the aliens are telling them. Even if that's not Obama's people doing it, if that's a private group, Obama has to answer for all this. He has to answer, are you re-abducting people? Have we got any control over abductions and stuff like that? And that's that kind of fear that you can play. And that my thing was Jimmy Carter. Why did Jimmy Carter buy into the cover-up? And that's what people inside were saying, that they went and sold him this bill of goods and made him so scared that he just said, let the next president worry about it. I don't want to deal with this. Because you can scare the pants off anybody if you take a look at certain aspects of this phenomenon.
Bill Hicks said that when the president becomes president, they take him down to the basement and show him a video of the Kennedy assassination.
Well, that's the kind of stuff that may actually take place. And the other problem is that when you become president, the cover-up is suddenly yours. It's your CIA. Like you can see Obama. How many secrets has he released on anything? Nothing. How many times has he attacked the CIA, NSA? That's his CIA. It's his NSA. He has to defend these guys. It's his people now.
Do you honestly think Barack Obama or any of the recent presidents make any decisions about anything?
Well, yeah, that's another question. Even Bill Clinton, you saw the Bill Clinton video where he says, I'm probably not the first president they lied to or that bureaucrats tried to wait out. That's a direct thing, because he was asked by Sarah McClendon with Stephen Greer, why don't you do what Stephen Greer's people are doing? They want disclosure. Why don't you do something about these UFOs? And according to Sarah McClendon, Bill Clinton leaned over and said, Sarah, there's a government inside the government and I don't control it. And then you hear about the right-wing conspiracy, and Bill Clinton is now talking about it again. He's saying the same right-wing conspiracy that got him into trouble and threw him out of office is going after Barack Obama.
Okay, just 1 minute. No, please, you've had so many questions. Can somebody else, please, like to ask? Sorry about that.
What's the likelihood that we're ever getting the truth? Because is there somebody or an organisation within an organisation in the military that really control it? Because that seems to be the way that it is. And they control what the president has privy to and what he has got privy to. What's the likelihood of ever getting information if this is the case?
Well, that's my whole thing where I say I don't really call it the government anymore, because it looks more and more like the real stuff is controlled by people who aren't in the government. For example, the story of Stephen Greer, and it's now been confirmed, goes with Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell, and I talked to Billy Cox, who talked to Admiral Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson is the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who are the main military advisors to the president. He's the head of their intelligence, and Greer and Mitchell show him this list of projects, and he suddenly realizes one of the projects on their list is one that he controls, and he phones up the guys and he's not even able to talk to the guy running the project. He talks to a lawyer, and the lawyer says, well, why are you asking these questions? You don't have any need to know, and hung up the phone on him. And he was running the project. So if the guy that's head of intelligence can't get answers, the question is, who's running the show?
Exactly.
Yes?
What effect has it had that this ex-Soviet Union, the Russians have released their secret files, the French have now released their secret files?
Okay.
Is there a
Well,
illusion here to
well, I think there is an illusion because people always talk about the governments have released their files. They haven't released their files. They've released their sighting files, which are non-classified, simple stuff. In fact, in Canada, the Canadians released theirs back in 1978. All their files came out. And these are but their sighting files. And the guy who controls the files is at the same university as me, Chris Rakowski. The Canadian government doesn't know what to do with the sighting files. And he gets all the files. The Canadian, and this is a private citizen, and people are filing Freedom of Information Act requests and stuff like this. The files that the governments are releasing are, I'm trying to figure out whether they're throwing the UFO community a bone just to make everybody say, okay, everything's okay, and we're being honest with you, but they're really not significant files. What we're looking for is the files dealing with the black projects, dealing with the crashes and stuff. These sighting files, all the governments are releasing them, and it may just be that the government doesn't control the UFO situation. All the government has is these unclassified sighting files, and the government is throwing up their hands, and we don't want this. Throw it out, let's release it. So the government is disclosing this stuff, but that's all they control is the sighting files. The real files are controlled by somebody outside the government.
Well, I wouldn't put down the sighting files because in the case of the ex-Soviet Union, some of those files indicate that there were sightings of UFOs that disabled their nuclear weapons. Now that's not just a sighting.
But it may be a significant thing, but what you want is when it goes to, what do the Joint Chiefs of Staff think about that? What's the Joint Chiefs saying about that shutdown? When you get to higher levels, then you get studies on, for example, the book by Hastings on nuclear weapons and UFOs. Where is the study where they, for sure the American government has got to be looking at their nuclear weapons and why are these UFOs around the nuclear weapons? Where are those files? Where are the sightings? And if you've been in government files, there's going to be millions of pages because they just produce paper. Where are the real files that are going to tell us what's going on? That's why I say if you get a high-ranking person, and I asked Cheney, Mr. Cheney, in all your jobs, because he'd been Secretary of Defense, he'd been Chief of Staff for Ford, he was Vice President. I said, in all your jobs in government, have you ever been briefed on the subject of UFOs? And if so, when was it, and what were you told? That's what you want. You want the briefing. You want the real files. And Cheney just said to me, if I had been briefed on that subject, it would probably be classified, and I wouldn't be talking about it. And I just, whoa.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Because I think the Americans control it. I know in Canada.
I was thinking, what about other key presidential figures in other countries? For example, in China. China's growing now. Brazil now just brought out with slope of new files there.
Yeah.
3-4 months ago. So why the United States? Why do we have to deal with the United States with this is larger? What about all these other countries?
Well, if they've got the material, you got to put it out. One of the reasons why governments don't release the material is you don't know it. That's one of the theories. You don't know everything. So say the Russians were just decided they're going to release what they've got. They got 35% of the answer. They release it, and they got the 25% the Americans want. The Americans go, thank you very much, and take it. So you don't want to release, you don't want to put your cards on the table because you may be giving your enemy, this is technology. We're talking, who cares where they come from? In terms of military intelligence, who cares? We want to know it. Can you take the president of the Soviet Union, kidnap the guy, get into his mind, put stuff in his mind? It's the technology you want. Can you fly around and go wherever you want and nobody can touch you? Can you do all this kind of stuff? It's the technology, and that's the kind of stuff that whether you're Brazil or you're Russia, you don't want to release. But if you take a look at the case in Brazil with the with the aliens, where the aliens were running around the street. Yeah, and the Americans, the story was the Secretary of State went in there, and the Americans took the bodies and took everything out of there, and in exchange they put a man on the space shuttle. I went and checked it. Sure enough, about 6 months after, The Brazilians put somebody on the space shuttle, and it was in exchange for this material that the Americans have, I think, have more power than people realize. Plus, Stephen Greer says it's an international group. He says it's 250 people, and they've got key people all over the world. It's not totally an American group. And Dr. Eric Walker, this book that I wrote, it was a key person who knew everything that was going on. And when he was asked about this MJ-12 concept and stuff, is it all Americans? And he said, no, it's not. And he confirmed, it's not all Americans. But the Americans still, I think, have a lot of influence over this subject.
We take one last question, because you had a question. Sorry.
I think the Americans have more power, I think have more fear.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, one more last question from the back there.
This question might address a lot of the other questions that have been asked. You didn't mention Majestic, or MJ-12. Now, from there, it seems that Brzezinski, Henry Kissinger, and Dick Cheney were all members of the last convening group of 12. And it seems that when you look at Brzezinski, he formed the Trilateral Commission 73, was National Security Advisor for Carter.
Yeah.
People in the know, I can refer, they said that when it came to the big decisions, Ziebig would call the shots, not Jimmy Carter.
Oh, yeah.
And
Sure.
you mentioned that he's been left out of the Obama administration. Keep in mind, Obama is his protege. But it seems to me that the secret government, because you have two governments, you have the official government and the secret government, they're the ones who have all the documentation. Because the dilemma is, if a president wants to disclose, then the big dilemma is, where is the evidence? Because the official government has none.
Yeah, well,
Very close to.
Sure, because Bill Clinton definitely tried to get the answer, and couldn't get anything, and he reportedly, according to Stephen Greer, was furious because they gave him a briefing and said, you know, the Blue Book and this whole thing. So that's why I said that's what I'm moving to now is the 64 reasons. Who's actually behind this thing? To try to verify some of Stephen Greer's stuff about 250 people in the world know some of the stuff. There's 200 know a little bit more. There's only 25 who know the whole thing. And that Colin Powell is in the 50 top, and he thinks he knows everything, but he's not in the top 25. And is there this worldwide thing that picks presidents? Like they say, David Rockefeller picks the president. And if he says you're going to be president, you're going to be president. And that's the whole thing is to try to get, because the answer does not appear to be in the government. It appears to be outside the government, and that's where I'm going next.
And the biggest thing is with most presidents, they all live in fear, because if they don't vote the party line, they will be assassinated. And I think if you go back to the John Fitzgerald Kennedy assassination, if presidents are brought to these places and shown things, these boilers things beyond their dreams, is it not possible what happened to Kennedy was that he was going to expose the existence, as if he was assassinated over Vietnam, was very little assassinated for?
It's possible, but I think the more important thing was, like, for example, I showed you Clinton had a new investigation on JFK. Why would he have a new investigation? Because he didn't believe the official line either, that he was killed by a lone gunman. He was doing his own investigation because he was fascinated with the Kennedys.
I believe myself, these men, women that do get a woman president, I believe they do live in fear. And they do know that they can and would be assassinated.
Yeah, plus they can cut your power off. It's not just killing you. That they killed Bill Clinton with all sorts of stuff. I mean, or Jimmy Carter fired 200 CIA agents as soon as he came in because it was all corrupt, and the CIA made his life hell for 4 years. If you turn against your people, it doesn't have to be an assassination. They can really fix you.
No, I think we have to wrap it up now, because we could go on and on forever. This is the trouble with once you start pressing.